So thank you all again for coming, and especially to Steve Owens. We really appreciate and look forward to his presentation. So you've heard our land acknowledgement, and I just want to make an announcement about the fact that the steering committee has agreed to form a new organization that is a 501c3, because we are, since the beginning of Watertown Citizens, a 501c4, which allows us to do lobbying and certain things, but it complicates things when we're trying to get grants. And so, like many other 501c3 and 501c4 organizations like 350.org and Mass Peace Action, we have decided we want to create a Watertown Citizens Education Fund that can be used to allow us to both take in grants and have events done under the Educational Fund name for things that are in the educational area, but still allow us to continue doing lobbying efforts through the 501c4. So we are asking anyone who's interested, and if you can let others know, that we're looking for a few people to help us create the new 501c3. And we have lawyer David Downs working with us to help us do the application. And we need to just create bylaws, mission statement, articles of organization, and submit them and do that. So if you are interested in helping, just please put something in the chat. Or you can write to the website later if you decide. And if you can let others know about that, that would be great. So thank you. And now let's move to brief working group reports. And hi, Eileen. And we'll start with Jennifer and the Pigs Gusset Initiative.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Our Pigs Gusset Initiative, our main thing that we've got going on right now is that we are having our third annual Watertown celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day. That will be on Sunday, October 13th from 12 to 4. And it will be at the Hosmer Elementary School like it was before. And I'm putting the flyer, the publicity flyer, in the chat right now. So you can access that. We've been sending it out to lots of groups. So hopefully you'll be seeing more information around about that. And we also have been working, there's a core group of us that's been working on a Watertown Indigenous story map and tour. And we have a 40+ page document that's rich with history of Indigenous people in Watertown from before the colonial settlers arrived, and that project's moving right along. We're excited about that. And then I did want to let people know that Branchline will be having an Indigenous food night or Indigenous dinner. It's a prix-fixé dinner for $65 on Tuesday, October 8th. And that will feature the food of Chef Sherry Pocknett, who was the James Beard Award winner, I think in 2023 for the Northeast. So I will also put that information in the chat as well. Branchline thinks it's going to sell out. They only have a certain number of tables and plates and stuff. So this is an early notice about that. So that's it for Pigs Gusset.
Thank you, Jennifer. Pam, Friends of Bees, anything to report?
Sure. Well, we just finished the latest Life-Friendly Garden Tour a couple weeks ago, and we did a follow-up tour with just some of the hosts going around together, and that was also a lot of fun. And right now, I think I at least am basically resting up and getting ready to figure out what we're going to do next year.
All right. Thank you. Peace and Common Security, who would like to give an update?
I'll do that quickly. We are continuing our work on two areas, our work around the citizen petition to bring in front of the City Council a resolution on Back to the Brink and disarmament. We have collected about 241 signatures. Our goal is to do 500. We had a nice event, though very small turnout this past Saturday. and we will continue to collect at the Fair on the Square. We have a nice display that we'll be using at the Fair on the Square. In addition, continue to do our work on Gaza, and we are showing 2 films, one on September 29th called The Night Won't End, Biden's War on Gaza. And then on October 20th, these are both Sundays at 4 o'clock at the church, the Belmont Watertown United Methodist. The second film is Where Olive Trees Weep, and that will be on October 20th. And we will also have a display at the Fair on the Square to collect signatures on a petition calling for an arms embargo to Israel. And we will continue our weekly vigil at the Watertown Square every Saturday from 12 to 1. I think that's it.
Okay, so Tony, the petition, that's the one to the city council, yes?
Yes, the one about the nuclear weapons is one of the nuclear disarmament, and the project is called Back from the Brink. But the petition itself is asking them to support the 5 proposals within the campaign from Back from the Brink.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I have a brief report from the Refugee Support Group. We had a very successful picnic just a few weeks ago and had about 60 or 70 people come to Philipella Park. And it was really fantastic and a lot of fun for all the kids, and had a good time. And otherwise, we are planning some other events, and we are working to continue to develop our relationship with the official state contracted social service provider that's working with the Haitian immigrants in Watertown. So we are having regular bi-weekly meetings, which is great. And that relationship seems to be going really well. They appreciate all the work we do. They really want to keep working with us and appreciate all the knowledge we have, and even things like our spreadsheets that have a lot more information than they do. So it's yeah, it's working well. And lastly, in the working group reports, who would like to give a report on Watertown Faces climate change?
So I'll do that. Well, we're still kind of reeling from the whole budget process, the last legislative session, and all the missed opportunities there. But see, tonight's meeting with Steve is maybe shedding some light on where and how we can be more effective, or at least understand the process better. So in the meantime, we do have a few little initiatives working on preventing idling vehicles, reducing the use of gas-powered landscape equipment, and also spending a lot of energy trying to influence the Watertown Mall development to reach more towards our climate goals. And we have this event coming up. I'm going to share the screen, see if I can share the flyer. Let's see. There we go. Do you see it?
There we go.
There it is.
Yes. Okay. So there's a group called Warheads to Windmills, which really is working in the space of climate and peace, because so many resources are going to war, and it's diverting so much attention that we can't make the kind of progress we need with climate change. And so they have created 2 weeks of action. And the week coming up is the Climate Action Week, and Jackie and I, on behalf of Watertown Faces Climate Change, have organized a letter writing event at the library. So this is targeting, as you can see, several of the big energy fossil fuel producers, and they have letters that we will print out and people can sign, which actually are tailored to each of those companies. Like, we know how much you spent in lobbying, we know you do this, and urging them to to change their approach. And one of the things that they're doing is we can say that we're committing ourselves to reviewing our investments to ensure that they're not investing in fossil fuels. And there's this wonderful tool, which you can see on the poster, where you can go to and actually view your investments if you're interested in that too. So this is on our website. You can go to watertowncitizens.org and you can see this. You could do these letter writings on your own, but we think it would be kind of fun if people stopped off on their way to the farmers market. Next Wednesday, we'll be there from 2:30 to 4 in the library. You can just pop in, sign a couple letters, and then go on and buy your tomatoes and peaches. Now how do we get out of being shared?
Deborah, do you want to announce the movie also on October 10th?
Yes, we're co-sponsoring a movie called
Stuart Udall, The Politics of Beauty.
Thank you.
It's going to be at the Watertown Public Library. There's pizza starting at 6 and the movie starts at 6:30. And the person in charge of environmental justice at the Conservation Law Foundation, her name is Brittany Jenkins, will be speaking about environmental justice. The movie's really good. Susan Falkoff and Deborah and Connie Henry and I all watched it a week ago Saturday. It's very inspirational. Stuart Udall was the Secretary of the Interior for almost the entire 1960s during the Kennedy administration and then the Johnson administrations. And he was very concerned with environmental justice. He worked both to integrate the University of Arizona when he was a student there, the basketball team, the cafeteria. He also was a lawyer and advocate for indigenous people during the 1970s in Arizona and Utah, people who are affected by uranium mining. Anyway, I hope you guys can come. Race Reels, Progressive Watertown, and Watertown Faces Climate Change are all co-sponsoring the screening.
The date one more time?
It's Thursday, October 10th.
Okay.
So, and the timing is a little different than the regular Race Reels. The pizza's at 6, the movie's at 6:30. I think usually it's 5:30 and 6. So anyway.
And it's listed in the website too, if you want to.
Right. And Connie just made us a really nice flyer, so we'll be sending that out to everybody.
Great. All right. Eileen and Deborah. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over.
We have next month's meeting, right?
What-
Jackie and Todd have, I think, an update about next month's monthly meeting.
Okay.
So the next monthly meeting, a few of us had gone to the cable news station in Watertown for the orientation and got a little excited about it. And so our next meeting will be at the cable news station. It's on I don't have, what date is it, Deborah?
I'll look it up.
You have to look at, anyway,
October 16th.
and what we're doing is we're the 18th, Jennifer?
16th, the 16th.
Thank you.
And what we would really like all the working groups to be represented there, and it's really to be a brainstorming session, how we might work together, and what we can do to use the cable TV, so for our benefit and also for theirs. So that was the idea behind it. It's brainstorming.
Hey, thank you. And that has to do with there's training that is available in orientations from WCATV to help us learn how to use equipment and put together programs, that sort of stuff would be great.
And
Thanks.
we have a membership, Watertown
Yeah.
Citizens has a membership so that we have 18 people can participate in the trainings.
What time is that meeting going to start?
It'll probably be our regular time unless you want it different. So 7 o'clock and it will be at their station.
and they will show us some of their programming too, so we can get an idea how different working groups, if they want to present something, how that would fit with the kind of programs they already have on the station.
So there'll be people from the station there helping, brainstorming with us.
Great. Our membership is good for a year. Okay, I think now we're ready to turn things over to Tony, who is going to introduce our illustrious guest and dear friend, Steve Owens.
Thank you very much. Yes, and he is a friend for many years. We have worked together on many, many campaigns, and both his and mine and a lot of other people's. And it gives me great pleasure just to be able to introduce him. Let me just say a few things. He just won re-election for the third time. Well, he will win re-election in November. He just won the primary. So now he is going to be re-elected again for his third term in November. There are two things about Steve that are amazing. One, that he's very productive, both in terms of what he does in the State House. He is co-sponsor of about 35 different bills, either in co-sponsored or sponsored them. But also he has an amazing ability to be everywhere. Steve has been at every, I don't know, an event that I've attended that I didn't see Steve. And whether it's in Cambridge or if it's in Watertown, he's out, it must be every night and every afternoon and every morning attending events. So it's he has really combined the two things that make a legislator a valuable asset to everybody. One is his legislative agenda, and second, his presence and his support for community events. I wanted to say that, we're very fortunate to have Steve, because in many ways he has the same values that many of us here in Watertown citizens have. And this sort of an example of this is his polluters pay bill, which, as you may remember, was introduced with himself and Senator Jamie Eldridge introduced the polluters pay bill, which is his belief that people who pollute the climate should be paying for that. And it's a good segue. Well, first let me say that it was particularly a good example of how his values merge with ours. The Watertown Citizens for Watertown Faces Climate Change was very much part of the event that took place here in Watertown, where Steve introduced the bill along with Jamie Eldridge, and there was a great turnout of young people and others talking about this bill. But it also allows me to segue into what Steve is going to talk about, because the bill, which is very progressive and very important in terms of saying, okay, who has polluted our environment, and don't we think that those people who have polluted it ought to pay for that pollution? But it also didn't go very far. And as we know, we've asked Steve to speak about how legislation does or does not get through our state legislature. And so this is a good segue into it. It's a great bill, but it's going to need a few more sessions before it gets legs. But let me turn this over to a good friend and an amazing legislator. We are so fortunate to have him as our legislator, as our state representative, Steve Owens.
Oh, well, thank you, Tony. That was very, very sweet and very kind. And any nice thing you say about me reflects back on you, because we've been doing this work together for a very long time now. And I really appreciate our partnership and friendship. And you know, I've been kind of in the Watertown citizens orbit, never like, you know, quite landing, but I count, you know, many of you among some of my closest, you know, Watertown friends. Oh, here's another one. Caroline, I see, just joined in. So really appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit tonight. Since Tony brought it up, I will talk a little bit about the polluters pay bill. You know, polluters pay bill and to bring back next session. I've already had some conversations with the Better Future Project people about tweaks we can make to the bill. There's a federal version that Senator Van Hollen from Maryland, I think, just launched, and our senator Ed Markey is behind as well. And so I met with his people recently. I met with them recently. I won't put a day on it. To talk about some of their ideas and how we can leverage the what's going on in Congress with what we want to do here in Massachusetts. And we shouldn't feel too bad that you know, that the bill didn't get that far. You know, they filed this in about a dozen states, some version of this, and it only passed in Vermont. It passed in one state. And the version they have in Vermont is slightly different than what we have. And so we're figuring out what lessons we can learn from Vermont. New York also passed it, but it's sitting on the governor's desk and she has not signed it yet. So it's just kind of sitting in limbo in New York. But those are the only two places where this is moved forward. So we're hopeful, and we're gonna keep at it and make some changes based on the feedback that we got from folks this session. So that was the polluters pay. Stay tuned. There'll be more. And we'll be going back at it next session. So anyway, if I could tell you all how to pass a bill, I would probably, of those 35 that Tony listed, they probably would have all gotten through. What I will do is what I want to do is give you kind of a little bit of a civics lesson in two parts. And this is stuff that, you know, even I, who have been in and around Massachusetts politics for 15 or so years before I ran, didn't have any clue of any of this stuff. So I feel like this will be helpful information about how.
Hey, John.
And hey, John, how are you?
Good. Hi,
If
everybody.
I'm wrong on any of this stuff, you spent more time in the building than I did.
No. You're living it. That's your time.
Great. So I wanted to, before we got too far into it, you know, and since John is here, he will be hosting a forum with Progressive Watertown Sunday, October 27th, 3 p.m. in the Coolidge School. And I think so it'll be Jonathan and Danielle Allen is presenting with you.
Yeah, that's
so they
correct.
may get a little bit more into the why and how to move forward as I talk a little bit about the what tonight. And the first what I want to talk about is kind of what happened in July 31st. So read the Boston Globe, or listen to the news. What you'll have heard, what you would have heard on August 1st, is that the legislature went home and they left a bunch of things, and session is over, and nothing more will happen, which is not exactly happened or what happened since then. So what happened at the end of the July was the end of July 31st is the end of formal sessions. The idea being, we'll go back to our districts and, we'll campaign for our September primaries and then the November general, and we won't be passing any, laws after, in the lame duck session after November. So that was the idea behind having this deadline. And like with all deadlines, as has happened in previous years, the legislature waited till the very end to get some of that stuff, waited until the deadline and used the deadline as leverage to try to get things done towards the end. And many years that works. At the end of this session, a lot of bills got left on the table. So at the end of formal sessions, so what is a formal session? An informal session. If you want to see an informal session, they're all streamed live. They're all saved on the malegislature.gov website. You can dial one up. They usually don't take very long, maybe 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 15 minutes at the outset. So, and you can kind of get a sense for what they are. But really the only difference is that in a formal session, roll calls are allowed. In informal session, roll calls aren't allowed. They're out of order. Things require a roll call. Well, sorts of things that require a roll call are veto overrides. Certain land takings require a roll call, and bond authorizations. And we'll come back to that in a second. And that's basically it of the common things that might require a roll call in the Constitution. Pretty much everything else can be passed on a voice vote, and the Senate in particular loves to pass things on a voice vote. But pretty much anything can be passed.
Oh,
Was there
Please mute. Can everybody please mute?
pretty good. Oh, yeah? Hard, but good.
All right, I think we got a couple folks that are unmuted, but I can plow through. So that's really the only difference. And in a formal session, members can request a roll call vote. That takes 16 members to agree to it. 10% of the body right now. And typically that's taken by a standing vote. They'll you stand if somebody will ask for a call of the ayes and nays, and people will stand up. If it's more than 16, then they will take the roll at the end of that vote. If not, it'll just go through by a voice vote. All those in favor say aye, opposed nay, the ayes have it or the nays have it, depending on what the chair hears. So that is really the difference. There's that roll call vote between an informal session. And typically only non-controversial bills are taken up in informal sessions. And because only non-controversial bills are taken up in informal sessions, they're relatively lightly attended. And because the informal sessions are lightly attended, any member can come in, look around, see there's only half a dozen people in the room who are members, and doubt the presence of a quorum. If you know Robert's Rules of Order, if there's not a quorum present, then you shut down business for the day and you come back when you have a quorum. So that is typically what I mean when they say, oh, we are operating in informal sessions and the objections of any one member can grind the whole business to a halt, right? So we're operating by unanimous consent. We're all operating under the agreement that, under the fiction that we have a quorum. If somebody says, actually, we don't have a quorum, I want to stop the progress of whatever's happening in the informal session, then everybody goes home. Now, the end of last year, we saw this kind of live. So if you go back, if you want to, you can watch them. The House and Senate again missed a deadline to agree on the supplemental budget, and that supplemental budget had some large number of authorizations of public sector collective bargaining agreements baked into it, right? So these were university employees, these were other state workers, and really the hard work of the collective bargaining had already gone on. The bargaining units had come to an agreement, and all the legislature really needed to do was say in law that yes, this contract is valid, this pay raise is whatever, and is approved, and the spending is authorized. More importantly, the spending is authorized so people could get their raise. So the House and Senate attached that to the supplemental budget. This was part of the supplemental budget that had some of the authorizations around the migrant housing spending. So this authorized another, I forget exactly the number right now, but it authorized more money for the emergency shelter system. And the Republicans didn't like that. They didn't like that it authorized money for the emergency shelter system. So after the House and Senate missed the deadline for formal sessions at the end of last year, which is the third Wednesday in November, I think. I have it up here. Yeah, third Wednesday in November of the odd numbered years. Then they thought, okay, well, it's just a supplemental budget. We can pass it in informal session. Well, the Republicans came, and the first time they tried to pass that supplemental budget with all the state contracts in it, the Republicans said, no, we doubt the presence of a quorum. There wasn't a quorum. They tried again the next day on a Saturday, thinking that, well, the Republicans aren't going to come in on a Saturday. And they came in and they doubted the presence of a quorum again. So we all had to go home. Well, whoever was there went home. And after those two times, members got the message. And on the informal session on Monday, there was a quorum. So even though, the Republican, I think he's the assistant majority leader now, Paul Frost, he stood up, he said he doubted the presence of the quorum. They did a standing count. We had more than a quorum there, and we were able to pass that supplemental budget on a standing vote, despite the fact that it was a controversial bill, and it was an informal session, so roll calls were not allowed. So all that to say is that things can still get passed in informal session. Since the end of formal sessions, the legislature has already passed a maternal health bill that's been worked on for a while. Was part of a maternal equity and maternal health commission. Some of the recommendations out of that, things around doulas and midwives. We passed a long-term care reform bill. Passed another supplemental budget with more state contracts in it. And then tomorrow we'll be passing a bill that will help us that will use the rainy day fund interest to help leverage against federal funds that are available under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and some of the Biden bills, the Inflation Reduction Act as well. So those were bills that we were, that under the normal course would have gotten, we would have voted on before the end of the formal session, gotten out, had time to look them over before we voted on them. But this, they're still getting out at this point. And we'll go into this, we can go into this a little bit more later, but these are all bills that have been passed by the House and the Senate at one point. A conference committee came together to put out the final version of the conference committee report. The only thing that members can do with that is vote yay or nay on it. We can't amend a conference committee report under the rules. So now, if you wanted to stop one of these bills, you could show up in informal session and doubt the presence of a quorum, and then everybody would go home, and you would delay the process until people got back from vacation and started crowding into the chamber again. So there is an opportunity to stop the bills, but there's not an opportunity to change them at this point. So they're going forward that way. Left undone at the end of the session was a climate bill that I worked pretty hard on. There's still some opportunity, some chance that will go forward. I know that the members of the conference committee have been working on it. I know that the governor filed part of it as part of her final closeout budget, which I'm not sure helped or hindered the effort, but here we are. And an economic development bond bill. So this was a bill that the governor actually launched in Watertown at the old Sasaki place at a company called Via Separation. Launched her clean tech initiative. So she wants to basically do for clean tech and green tech what the state did for biotech, to really give some incentives for those businesses to start up here, and we're pretty well positioned for that, and hopefully we will get that. I know there's a lot of interest in getting that through, but it is a bond bill. So bond authorizations do need a roll call vote, do need a formal session. The House Speaker, the Senate President, and the governor have all said they're willing to bring people back for a formal session. The House works on, the legislature works on rumors. So the rumor is that we will be back for a formal session if they can agree on it, to vote on this economic development bill. My hope is that we will vote on that and the climate bill on the same day and get them done, and get them out before the end of the year, because the real end of the session is the first Wednesday in January. And as John knows, because you were there, 4 a.m, the first Wednesday of January of 2021?
Yes. My last day in the
So as
legislature.
I was,
As
just
you
a
were
few hours
starting up-
before I was inaugurated, they ended the session, the previous session. Remember, this was during COVID, so everything was remote. So that's the real end of the session. That year, they did away with the rule that said you could, that ended formal sessions at a date certain. So, like with any rules, these can be overridden, and they can be changed or waived as needed. So I'm still hopeful that we'll be back. We can't change. We still will have to have a roll call On the economic development bill, that's in the Constitution. That's not in the rules, so we can't just wave that away. That one we have to do. But I am hopeful that we'll be back. So I'm going to stop there just for a second, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what a typical session looks like if I'm a legislator that's filing a bill, and what happens to that bill, and how I might get it through the system. Are there any questions about anything I've said at this point? I figure Caroline for sure has a question.
Well, why don't people raise their hands if they're, and Sue Ellen, do you want to do this or me in terms of recognizing people? Okay, well, Pam has raised her hand. Sue Ellen, you're muted.
So I was wondering if we could talk about the Ways and Means Committee, because it's my experience that legislation that I have supported for instance, regulating pesticides to protect pollinators gets voted out from its, like the Agriculture Committee, and then it goes to Ways and Means, and we never hear about it again. So what exactly does Ways and Means do?
So the primary job of the Ways and Means Committee is to put together the budget. So the annual budget, that is the primary job of the Ways and Means Committee. So this coming year, the governor will put out her budget at what is it, March 1st. March 1st, the governor puts out her budget in 25. And the Ways and Means Committee, their job is to take that budget and turn it into the House Ways and Means budget. That budget gets amended and voted on by the House. It gets sent to the Senate. The Senate Ways and Means does their own version of the budget. The Senate amends it, votes on it, and then gets reconciled. Those two versions get reconciled, and eventually that goes to the governor for her signature. So that is that's the biggest job of the Ways and Means Committee. Now, because they deal with anything that spends money, any bill that costs or spends money goes through the Ways and Means Committee, which is many of them. So any bill that costs or spends money will go up from its actual committee, or from its subject matter committee, to the Ways and Means Committee, where they will act or not act on it as they see fit. Sometimes what'll happen is the bill gets combined with another bill or another group of bills or with the budget and gets put out that way. Sometimes the House Ways and Means Committee looks at the bill and says, well, that's not our priority right now. We have other priorities. And you try to fight for it, and you try to get it, the sponsor will try to get it out, and maybe they're successful and maybe they're not. With the pollinator bill, actually, that's not the one I'm thinking. I was thinking about the rodenticide bill. Sorry, but some of those, you want your bill to get out of committee. So you want your bill to get a favorable report out of committee. So it is good to get that, but that doesn't mean your job is done. And that falls on typically the lead sponsors of the bill, the advocates, to do work to convince the Ways and Means Committee, and particularly the chairs, that this is important and should be released to be voted on. Caroline.
Hi, I wasn't gonna ask a question, but since you said, I'm just curious, is there anything that you think might actually be voted on during this period of time? Like since it has to be non-controversial, do you have any hopes that anything of consequence is going to come through?
Yeah, I
You
do. I
can't-
think I think the economic development bill will go through. I'm not confident, but I am hopeful that that economic development will be voted on. And if they're bringing us back to vote on that economic development bill, that's when they are likely to bring us back for anything that might have any sort of controversy attached to it, and that includes the climate bill. So we'll know a little bit more as conversations get closer. You know, the other pending bills are the hospital reform and the prescription drug bill. You know, I know that Rep. Lon has been working on those, and I know those the original thinking was maybe they would combine those two into one bill and then push that out late or early August 1st. That didn't happen. So now I think they're going to spend some time trying to get it right. I hope. So there's a chance that those bills, some version of those bills, gets out as well. And anything that's in Ways and Means now is a possibility to get out. Or anything that's in third reading has a possibility to get out. So we'll see. But my expectation is that at some point in the next couple weeks we'll start to hear that economic development bill is close, and then we'll get called back in. That's my working theory anyway. Connie?
Yep.
So this may not be part of this conversation, but I can't resist asking. So during a time like this, when there may be a special session, is there any role in terms of citizen resident advocacy? And clearly I'm thinking about the climate bill and the provisions that came out of the Senate.
Yeah. So one of the things that would help me, because I want there to be a climate bill too. If I'm not, if I would say, reach out to your rep and senator and let them know that you expect there to be a climate bill before the end of the year. And that includes reaching out to me so I can say, look, I just got, my people are clamoring for this. We need to get something through. The governor in her closeout budget put out just the siting and permitting piece, a piece that's less than what the House put together, not even as aggressive as what the House passed. So there is a chance that we don't get anything other than the siting and permitting, which is, the siting and permitting reforms are good, but it would be a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion, if that's all that comes out of this process. One of the things that I hope John and Danielle will talk about at their meeting is some of the maybe downsides by having since this is going to be all handled in a conference committee report, of having just a small group of people make this decision, and the rest of us, we can write letters, we can make phone calls, we can advocate, but at the end of the day, we don't necessarily know how the decision was made. So my hope is that we'll get something out of this, and there is a role to be played. And I'm already getting emails in my inbox saying we want a robust climate bill. We don't want just the siting and permitting, and keep that up. And I will say though, and there's thanks, Caroline. She just texted me that she wants a robust climate bill before the end of the session. I will say that there's 200 members of the legislature and there's 200 different ways to do this job. So I don't know that everybody responds to stimuli the same way that I do, but that's what I would say if you're looking for something to do. Sue Ellen.
Yeah, so just a quick follow-up question to that. So in writing letters to you and to Will, I assume it would be helpful to not just say something as generic as we want to see a robust bill, but to specifically state that the citing and the permitting is not adequate, that we expect blah, blah, blah. Is that correct? Just if we be more specific?
I mean, I know what I want in the climate bill. So if you tell me what you want in the climate bill, that would help.
Okay, thanks.
I've been working, for the past for the entire session to try to get some of those gas provisions in. They're in the Senate bill, which as a House member makes it kind of awkward for me, but they're closer than they've been in a long time. Jennifer.
Okay. Oh, all right. Jennifer, hand up, and then we should go back to Steve's lesson in an example of what would happen if you had a bill. But let's do Jennifer next.
Well, I don't know if this fits in at this point or if I should wait, but I'm also curious. There's been an indigenous legislative agenda that's put forward 5 different bills.
Yeah.
For many years now. And I'm just curious if you have a sense of where that's at. I know many people have lobbied, they've written letters. I just not quite sure what you would advise for people to do to help with that.
Yeah, so there are a couple pieces of that agenda, and some of it has gone further than others. I know part of it was like the flag and seal. There was a whole commission, and the commission ended up like just punting on the whole issue. It was kind of a waste of everybody's time.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if Mississippi can figure out how to change their flag, like I feel like we can, right?
One would hope.
It's probably so. I can check on where those bills are and which ones kind of moved forward. I was really hoping that the mascot bill would go forward because there's so many school committee races that turn on that sort of thing, and that's not really, the mascots fights are not really what you want a school committee race to turn on. You want it to turn on like actual education policy,
right.
Not on like who's not on trying to keep the old mascot that the 100-year-old or 50-year-old mascot, right? So so I was hopeful for that one. That one looked like it was going places at one point, but I don't know exactly where it is in the process right now.
Is there active opposition among some of the legislators to any of these bills?
I will say that the Columbus Day bill, the current Speaker of the House is of Italian descent, and the current Chair of Ways and Means represents the North End. So it is unlikely that bill will move forward from the House.
Okay. All right, Steve.
And I know this is being recorded, so hopefully nobody listens this far in for that frank bit of analysis. But
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Steve, you wanted to take
yeah. So really, what I wanted to do is kind of give you a sense of the timing of the process, right? Because what I didn't appreciate at the time, because I only helped people get elected. I didn't actually do any policy work. That was for other people. What I didn't appreciate is how how these things move through the process and what some of the deadlines and restrictions are, right? So, we will be inaugurated the first Wednesday in January. So that will be January 1st this year. So New Year's Day, I'll be spending at the State House. The bill filing deadline for the entire 2-year session is the third Friday in January. So any bill that we want to be considered timely filed, and I'll get to that in a second, any bill that's considered timely filed needs to be filed by, I think it's January, I'm not looking at it now, but it was like January 17th or 15th or something like that. You guys can do the math if you like. But so all the bills, so right now what I'm doing, because Tony already said I'm going to win in November, so I'm already setting my agenda for next year. So right now I'm working on the bills that I'm going to file, because that 3 weeks is not enough to file not enough to come up with or to put together, a well thought out bill in a lot of cases. And it's certainly not enough time to have conversations with stakeholders, because they're all trying to get their own bills through. So, bill deadline, third Friday in January for it to be timely filed. Every timely filed bill will get a bill hearing in a committee. Every bill will have its committee hearing. If it's been timely filed, it's guaranteed to have a committee hearing. Can you get more time? The answer is sort of. You can work with the House Counsel. If you work with the House Counsel, you can put a placeholder in your bill and say, my bill's being worked on by the House Counsel, and then you work with the House Counsel, and then you place what the House Counsel said was what you worked on with the House lawyers into that bill. So a lot of bills, on that fourth month, or that the Monday after the third Friday in January, you'll see that just that placeholder language. You'll see a bill title and placeholder language. The other kinds of bills that can get more time are home rules. So if I don't think we have a quorum, we just have the two of you. So if the Watertown City Council, or three of you, you guys aren't on the same committee. So the Watertown City Council sends the delegation a bill for us to file on behalf of the town. For example, when we passed the bill, the bill that allows the city to put liens on your house for unpaid fines and fees. That one passed. It was signed by the governor. So if the city council puts forth a bill, a home rule petition, then we can file it at any time. It goes to the rules committee, and they recommend moving it forward. If it's not a home rule, you can still file it, but the rules committee gets to decide whether or not it'll move forward and get a hearing. And if they can sit on it for a while, if you're not aggressive with trying to get it out. So that's called a late file. If I just file a regular bill, and it goes through the rules committee to get out. So once my bill is filed, it will go to a committee for a bill hearing. What we have in Massachusetts, for the most part, except for the Ways and Means and some other things, are joint committees. So the House and Senate typically hold their committee hearings at the same time together, and recommend bills to come out of committee, as one committee. The bill, so my bill gets a hearing. You may not get a lot of advance notice on when your hearing will be, but the good thing about one of the good things to come out of the pandemic adjustments is all the committee hearings are online, and all the committee hearings allow for remote participation. It's usually through Teams, so it's maybe not as, maybe it glitches out sometimes, but the remote participation is there. It used to be the case where if you were out and say, for us it doesn't, it matters, but we can get to the State House relatively easily. If you're out in Worcester or Springfield or Pittsfield, you would have to come in, spend a day to wait for your 3 minutes of testimony, and then go back home. Now we have the option to do remote testimony. So bill goes to the committee. It has its committee hearing. As the sponsor of a bill, I will try to meet with the committee chairperson to advocate for my bill and tell them why I filed it, who else is with it. I'll bring in advocates. I may do a briefing, bring people in for a longer discussion of the bill. I think some of you have been to briefings that I've held on various things. And in kind of the default case, the committee reports out your bill favorably, you would hope. And the way that works is the committee polls its members, and that poll, typically the chairs will recommend. We recommend that we release this bill out favorably. We recommend that this bill gets sent to a study. We recommend that this bill gets an extension so we can keep talking about it. And then the committee members will respond to that poll. And sometimes those polls depend. Each chairman can do the polls differently, but sometimes you'll get a poll and it's like 40 bills, and you have to go through them and think about what. Remember when it was heard. Remember when it was. Remember who was behind it. And all that stuff. So those committee polls, the bills are pulled out of committee. At that point, they either go to the next committee, which could be Ways and Means, could be healthcare financing, could be bonding, could be or they could go straight to steering policy and scheduling, which sends it to the floor kind of by default after 30 days. So that's if your bill is reported out favorably. But there's a bunch of different things that could happen at committee. The committee could redraft your bill. I had a bunch of bills getting redrafted. They said, we like your bill, we like the concept, but we don't like the language. We don't like this section. We want to change this. We want to add this part. And that's usually good because that means the committee was engaged on your bill. So when a committee redrafts your bill, that's you should not be offended that unless they completely destroy it, at least they were, engaged on the topic. They could attach your bill to another bill. So let's say they're putting together an omnibus, right? And this is what they did with some of those plastic bills. They combine them all together and put them out into one bill. So if you look at on the web page, it shows you. Okay, thanks, Connie. They could attach your bill to a bill that's sort of related without using any of your language. This was a new one on me this session. They attached the e-waste bill. John, that e-waste bill we worked on, we rewrote a bunch of it with the product stewardship folks, and they attached it to the plastics producer responsibility bill without using any of the language for e-waste. Still trying to figure out how they did that, but that was a new one. So your bill could get out of committee without actually getting out of committee. So So at that point, your bill isn't necessarily, still not necessarily moving forward, as Pam mentioned. It could get stuck in, it could be in Ways and Means. So there are a bunch of strategies that people use. They try to attach it to the budget as an amendment. They try to attach it to another fast-moving vehicle. So if you looked at the economic development bill, there were a lot of amendments that were just other people's bills that they were trying to get out of Ways and Means, and they were attaching them to the economic development bill. And sometimes that works, and sometimes they tell you that they're not going to entertain that since it's a bill, and we'll get to it when we get to it. And sometimes your bill passes one branch, and it gets sent over to the other. So most of the time, there'll be a House version of a bill and a Senate version of the bill, and often they'll be the exact same bill. So I'll file something with a Senate partner, and there'll be a House version and a Senate version. Sometimes they go out of committee and the House version goes to the House and the Senate version goes to the Senate. Sometimes they both get attached to each other and go to the same place. And if the bill starts in one branch and passes, there's no guarantee that the other branch will take it up. And that part of it leads to some of the gamesmanship we saw, I think, at the end of January or at the end of July. You didn't take up my bill, so we're not going to do this. And then they took up a bunch of things in rapid succession at the end. Just to, and created this kind of backlog that we're still working through. So let's say the House and Senate, they each pass a version of your bill. There's a couple things that could happen. One, they could just keep bouncing back. So I pass my version, I send it, the House passes its version, sends to the Senate. The Senate amends it, sends it back to the House. The House doesn't like that amendment, amends it again, sends it back to the Senate, and so on and so forth. That can happen. That happened with the vulnerable road user bill last session. It bounced back a bunch of times, changing the definition of vulnerable road users until it finally did pass. I think that one passed, January 1st before the session before this session started. But more typically, what'll happen? Well, not more for big bills. What'll happen is the House will pass its version, the Senate will pass its version, and then they'll disagree with each other and form what's called a conference committee. Conference committee will consist of 3 members of the House, 3 members of the Senate. Usually 2 of those are Republicans, so 1 Republican in the House, 1 Republican senator. Usually the committee chairs of the relevant committee, and maybe the vice chair, or maybe somebody else who's trusted and interested in the topic. And their goal will be to produce one compromise piece of legislation. Once they do that, we are supposed to have, if they do it before 8 p.m., we're supposed to have until 1 p.m. the next day to read it before we can vote on it. We can't amend it because this is the compromise that was hammered out by the negotiators. And so we can only vote up or down on it. And once that passes both branches, then it goes to the governor. She has 10 days to look it over. She could veto on money bills. She could line item veto. So on the budget, she can, strike out particular parts of it or send them back for amendments. So there's many more places where a bill can fail than it can succeed. It's almost a minor miracle every time something gets to the governor's desk, it feels like. So I don't know if that was illuminating at all. Happy to get into detail about any particular part of the process to the extent I can. you know, and happy to, if I got any of the facts wrong, I'm happy to be corrected. And I think my headphones are dying, so I'm going to need to swap these out. So talk amongst yourselves for a second.
As he's swapping, I just want to say that the toolkit is good for anyone you know, even outside Watertown, just to encourage. We have, Steve, there'd be other places that we could do that.
I wonder if we could take a second before we open it up for questions to Steve, because two of our co-sponsors are now present. They weren't present, and we said that each co-sponsor can say a few words about their group. So I wonder if Caroline would like to say anything about progressive. When I think did I see that Susan is here? Either Susan Falkoff or Caroline want to say something about progressive Watertown.
Hi, I would just say the State House is insane. Steve, I don't know how you can handle it. It's just, how crazy is that? That's all I have to say.
Okay, so nothing about progressive Watertown. Caroline, do you have?
Progressive Watertown actually is a branch, is a part of Progressive Mass, and really so it's really primarily concerned with state legislation and statewide issues rather than national or bigger issues. And it's really frustrating trying to work with the state legislature. So I would say a nice follow-up to Steve's presentation is a forum that we're having on, I don't know if it's been announced already, but on October 27th, John Hecht, who's been thinking a lot about what's wrong with the state legislature, and Danielle Allen from Harvard, we're doing a forum at 3:00 on Sunday, October 27th at the Coolidge Apartments. And I think that'll be very interesting follow-up to what Steve is telling us.
Thank you. Our other co-sponsor was Watertown Forward. And Nicole, would you just say a word or two about Watertown Forward?
Thank you, Tony. I'm happy to do it. And hi, everybody. I think many, but maybe not all of you are familiar with Watertown Forward. It was created during the most recent charter review, the very substantial charter review that occurred in whatever year that was. I don't know, because I'm not good at remembering years, but the last time. Well, we've been in hiatus for a while. We're keeping up to date on our tracker of are the charter changes being fulfilled, but we've been in hiatus otherwise. We will get re-engaged next year when the 5-year mark will come for or year after whatever, when the 5-year mark will come for the charter to be reviewed. There was a built-in 5-year review process in case something had gone way off the rails. So please watch for us then and engage with us then. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Sue Ellen to moderate the questions for Steve.
Sure. Any questions, comments about the presentation the whole time? Tony?
Steve, I was struck with how complicated it is to get a bill. And then I thought about, said, well, you know what, because of that, it would seem that what you should be doing is focusing on 2 or 3 bills. And so that you could spend the time digging in and monitoring and make sure they get from one place to the next. But that seems to run up against the desire of many folks who are initiating the bill to get co-sponsors or to get sponsors. So it seems like it's difficult to focus at the same time respond to your constituents who are saying, I'd like you to co-sponsor this bill. I'd like you to, you know, take the lead on another bill. So it seems that there's a built-in problem or a built-in struggle that you as a legislator have to deal with.
Sure, and I will say that, you know, there are love all my bills equally, but there are some of them that that I focus on. And there are some that I make a priority, and there are some that I have, and I, do the work and I have the conversations, and I don't expect them to go far, but they're around in case in case they catch fire, in case there's a, news story that breaks that makes them particularly relevant, in case there's some other larger bill that we can put forward, and that way I've done the work and said, oh yeah, I have this bill on embodied carbon that would go great with the housing bond bill or whatever. I mean, that's not how that happened, but just as an example. So there are some bills that we keep around because we like, and they're good ideas and we do the work on, but we kind of know that they need something extra to get put towards, whereas and I guess and there's some bills that just end up becoming moot over the course of the session, because again, we're filing these bills, right, particularly this session, right? We filed these bills before Governor Healy was inaugurated, most of them, right? So we didn't know exactly what her priorities were going to be as we approached the bill filing deadline. So some of the bills that I filed just happened. I had this great bill on solar, on changing the SMART program and working with DOER to increase the amount of solar through various ways. And they opened up a new they just created a SMART 3.0 program. They have they put it out for comment. They had a straw proposal out. The comments were due in August, and they're just going to do the things that I had this bill for, right? For about 85% of it. So sometimes things just happen. And because you were talking about it and you were ready, you were able to say, oh yeah, these are all the things that I wanted. I'm glad, and work with, we had a lot of nice conversations with DOER about what we wanted, and we had a bill and we had done the work and we had those conversations. So we weren't surprised that we got most of what we wanted, but we got it from the administration instead of from passing a bill, and the bill would tell the administration to do the thing that we wanted them to do by just talking to them, which is kind of different from when Baker was governor. A lot of the conversations with the administration didn't go that way.
Diana, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I think I missed in the first part of your presentation what exactly you said about the shelter system, whether it had been funded or not. I was very concerned about that because I used to work with
a
family shelter in Lowell. I don't know if you're talking about family shelters or individual people's
Well,
shelters.
these are the emergency shelters.
So that would be for the families.
And yeah, for families. And that was the bill that added, I think, I can't remember how much money it added to it, but it did end up adding that amount of money.
Oh, good.
That was the first bill that authorized the kind of limits on the shelter stays, but that was not as aggressive as what the limits that the governor announced most recently, the 5 days in the supplemental, what is she calling them? Supplemental shelters, I forget what she's what's that?
Emergency.
No, the place where you're waiting to before you get into the shelter system, and we called them, I forget what euphemism she was using.
Temporary respite centers.
There we go. I knew you'd know.
Yeah, well, thank you. I was very concerned about that because we used to, when I worked there, sometimes the waits would be up to a year. But of course, the reason is because so many of the subsidies had dried up, and they've probably dried up a lot more by now than back when I was working there. So that's why I was concerned. So I'm glad that some of it was funded so that maybe families could stay on until they finally can get a subsidy. That's what I was concerned about. Thank you.
Okay.
They can't.
Sue
Who's
Ellen?
calling on people?
I'm sorry?
Oh, Sue Ellen was. Sorry.
Okay. Can I just ask you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We could go way down that rabbit hole about what's going to happen when it gets cold and these families are sleeping outside of tea stations. I mean, the governor, she's a smart woman. I'm sure she's thinking about it because it's not going to play very well. Anyway, we're not going down that rabbit hole. Steve, I wanted to ask you, after you have regaled us with this incredibly, I mean, so Byzantine that Susan Balkoff is obviously she's having an allergic reaction. Have you ever, or does anybody know how they do it in other states? And is it as Byzantine and as unproductive as this, where you guys, you work really hard to go, blah, 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 and at the end of the session, half the stuff you cared about is nowhere?
So John might be able to answer that better than I have. I know every state is Byzantine in their own way. You know, I don't want to I mean, in New Hampshire, every bill gets a vote, but also in New Hampshire, you know, it's a extremely part-time legislature. There's like 5,000 members of the New Hampshire House, and they get $100 subsidy for their trouble. So, you know, I don't know that I would trade it. I would trade what we do for that. But, you know, I have some thoughts about, particularly if you'd asked me in the morning, well, Nicole was there. She caught me as I drove home on August 1st. She was having her office hours that I popped into, and yeah, if you had asked me that day if we could if we could do better, I would have absolutely said yes. And still,
it's just wondering, is there a model somewhere? And John, maybe you want to save this for when you and Professor Allen are giving your thing in October.
Yeah, I mean, as Steve said, I mean, every state is different, that you can see things in other states that work better than Massachusetts. We could borrow a little bit here and a little bit there. You know, I think even in terms of our own history in Massachusetts, I think that there are some concerning trends in terms of productivity, in terms of the increasing use of these massive bills, these mega bills, which get jammed up all together at the end of session and have a higher risk of falling apart in the way we saw in this last session and the one before to some degree as well. There's just much less sort of regular movement of bills in Massachusetts than there used to be. Bills on discrete areas of, say, within environmental policy or climate policy or within housing policy or within economic development policy that would move more regularly and more rapidly through the system over the course of the whole session, rather than having these bills all bundled up into these mega bills and all sort of collide on, you know, July 31st in a grand you know, negotiation session. So I think we can even look to, you know, our own past for some indication of why we seem to be encountering more of these you know, factors that are making the legislature less productive than I think it has been and should be.
and I will say at the end of this session, the House did something interesting, and we spent one of those days and we passed like 5 different animal rights bills, just kind of one after the other, and people gave their speeches on them, and they were great bills, and they passed pretty much all unanimously because they'd been, you know, I don't want to say languishing, but languishing in the legislature for, you know, some of them for 10 years. or more. And we just went through them one at a time, and it was like, you could get used to that, right? Just passing these small bills and that would have big meaning. And we didn't have to cram them all into one, animal rights omnibus. And some of them, I think the circus animal bill got signed by the governor already. Ollie's Law, which is licensing around, doggy daycares and kennels, that's off to the governor. So, and if some of them don't go, it wasn't that everything died. It was, parts of those, that agenda got through. So, I let a couple of my colleagues know that, hey, it's not, we don't have to just do this once. We could pass we could do more than one bill a day sometimes.
And do it starting much earlier in the session too.
Yeah.
And that, I think, has been an increasing problem. And what Pam was pointing to about bills getting, sort of left behind in Ways and Means, that problem has always existed, but I think it's become more and more serious. And bills that have passed have come through committee favorably session after session after session, and still never move out of Ways and Means. There are some systemic problems that need to be looked at, and we'll talk about that for sure
Okay.
on October 27th. And Danielle has a lot of thoughts about this too.
I bet.
She should
Well,
run for president.
So I just wanted to ask, looking back to Jennifer's comments on behalf of the Pigs Gusset Initiative Working Group, about the Italian leadership being an obstruction to getting those bills passed, or presented and acted
I
on.
wasn't speaking about all of them. It was just the Columbus Day one. That was just the other bills. I don't know that there's the same, I don't know that they're fraught in the same way around that community.
So I'm just wondering if you have an opinion about whether it's worth people actually reaching out personally to those individuals and trying to have a conversation and talk about the kind of, bias and intentions and.
I think that members, I know that there's members of the indigenous community who've got a group together who have had individual meetings with legislators before. I've been part of some of them in the past, and those were very powerful for me. And, I hopefully that, we can pull some more folks into those meetings. I think those meetings are very powerful when you're hearing from the folks that are impacted.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Thanks. Deborah.
So it seems like it's just sort of relationships that you get something or not. It's not really based on the issues.
well, it depends. I mean, it's definitely based on the issue. The relationship doesn't make it happen. There are people who are way up in leadership who have had bills that languish for, session after session after session. So it's not, oh, just because you have a good relationship, it'll happen. But at the same time, my colleagues have to trust me that I'm putting forth something good and not something, that's going to make them look bad, right? Or something like that. So there's definitely a interpersonal element to legislating, because we all have to work together and we all have to kind of trust each other, and we all have to, at the end of the day, I can't pass anything by myself, right? I've got to convince other people to vote for it. And there's not really a shortcut around there, at least not as a rank and file legislator. Maybe there is for some other folks in the Commonwealth, but even a lot of them ended up frustrated at the end of the session. So, I wouldn't say that it's all that the issue doesn't matter. It's only who you know. I think it's more complicated than that.
So the issue does matter. Then, and yet, so there's a few people, leadership that can assert a whole lot of power. As activists, how can we find out who's talking to them, who's funding, who's, contributing a whole lot to their campaigns? How can we, as without any sophisticated tools, find any of that out?
Well, the who's funding is all public. That's all in OCPS.
But you don't really know if it's, I mean, you have to know the person's name and tie them to a particular.
I mean, they're if they're a lobbyist, if you find somebody and they've contributed $200 to multiple people, you know that they're a lobbyist just by looking at OCPF, right? If they've got 30 contributions of $200 each, you know that they're a lobbyist. That is not necessarily like the thing that makes a difference. I mean,
right.
It's not the contributions that make a difference. It's that you're you're in the building, you're talking, you're the person who somebody hired to come in, so you've got money behind you, not so much that you've opened your personal checkbook, but whoever your client is, had enough money to hire you to come and, stand in front of the speaker's office or, talk to the majority leader or to,
So is there any way to
make their
find
rounds
out?
around the building. Yeah, that's all public. That's all on the Secretary of State's website. Who the lobbyists are and who they're lobbying for is all
And
public.
who and how much time they've spent with every, I mean, do we know?
That I don't, I think it does, actually, now that I think about it, it does say how much they make lobbying. So the people, so that you could.
We don't know who they talk to or what they're saying. I mean, I think it's.
People don't know what you're saying to me right now. So, I mean, I don't.
Well, as advocacy groups, we are very clear about what we're saying and what we're sort of working for. But some well-heeled lobbyists can go in and talk to someone in leadership. And how do we know that particular interest is what is driving things?
Again,
Just by the way, if I can,
Yeah.
the New York lobbying disclosure law does require the lobbyists to say who they meet with.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, that's interesting.
Not just who's paying them to do the lobbying,
Right.
but who in the
Uh-huh.
government, legislature, executive branch, whichever, they actually meet with, which would be a very helpful thing to have in
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
That'd be an interesting piece of information to have.
Great.
Eileen.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask how you justify having over 2/3 of the state supporting certain legislation and then not passing it on a statewide level. So the statistics I have at hand are about the single-use plastic shopping bag ban, which is
Right.
in 161 different cities and towns, representing more than 2/3 of the state population. Indigenous Peoples Day is also very high. I don't know what it is, but people in other states who are activists are shocked by the fact that when you've built a lot of momentum behind certain kinds of legislation in Massachusetts, it then does not get passed on a statewide level. So how do you justify that? Why doesn't it make a difference? It's very disappointing.
Yeah, it is disappointing. You're not wrong. How does it get justified? I don't justify it. I'm in favor of the plastic bag ban. I think we should have done the whole thing. So if I had an answer for that, we would be going a lot further.
Yeah, but do you think cities and towns should keep working on individual legislation? I mean,
I think that the thing with the thing that's going to move the plastic bag ban forward is every city and town is going to have a different one, and finally the industry is going to throw up their hands and say we're sick of fighting this. Let's have one standard that everybody has to do. That's probably how that's going to happen. And I thought it was going to happen this year. I thought it was going to happen last session. So
Well,
I got a really
alright,
bad
so
track record. I got a really bad track record on predicting the plastic stuff. So I'm not going to I'm not gonna,
Okay,
you know,
that bag ban, I think, has been before the legislature for 15 years and it has not passed. I think it's 2009. But I'm not positive on that. Anyway, I guess I lost my train of thought, but oh yeah, it comes back to what John was saying. It lumping all these bills together makes it much harder for them to pass. I think we need to start decoupling things. And simplifying it, like you were saying about the animal rights bills. Anyway.
yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, this the fact that we have for 2 sessions now, we haven't done anything on waste after all of the cities and towns are clamoring for help on that, after all of the the solid waste bans, the landfill bans, started to come forward. The fact that we haven't done anything on that is criminal, frankly.
Yeah, and
I thought for sure we were going to do it last session. I was shocked we didn't. You know, I stopped being shocked this session, and I was just kind of.
Well, to me, what's shocking is that thousands of people in the state want certain legislation. Dozens of elected officials support certain legislation, and it still doesn't get passed. I think it's frankly embarrassing. It makes us look so dysfunctional.
Yeah, there's a long list of things that make us look dysfunctional, and this is that. So that's one of them for sure.
All right, John, I'm looking forward to, oh, and I just want to say about the bottle bill, it's the only part of the climate bill that's actually going to make the state money. So that's another reason why we need to pass that updated bottle bill as part of the climate bill. So all of you who are writing your letters to Will and Steve afterwards, please say you want the updated bottle bill. It is included in the climate bill right now, but you want it to stay.
And John Lawn also is part of the initiative, and where we should also be keeping him.
Oh, yeah. For those who live in John Lawn's district, yes.
Any other questions, comments for Steve?
Well, I just want to appreciate Steve sitting through this. It's and his two-part presentation and all the questions. I'm sure it's been a long. It's already 8:45. It's been a long time, and just to appreciate him hanging in there with us. I really do.
Oh, anytime.
Yeah.
Let's indicate some support here. Thank you. I did have one thing, Sue Ellen, that one of our members of our steering committee suggested that that maybe you could repeat the 501c3 effort and see if there's anybody who'd like to help, because when we announced it, it was a small group. Now it seems to be a bigger group.
Sure. So just at risk of repeating myself for some of you, but the steering committee of Watertown Citizens decided to form a second corporation as a 501c3, because we've been a 501c4 since the founding of Watertown Citizens. It allows us to do unlimited lobbying. But the 501c3 will solve some of the issues around being able to accept grants that we have not been able to do in the past, or sometimes we have been given grants, but now we're told that that's changing. Now it can only be to a 501c3. And so the new organization we need to form would be called Watertown Citizens Education Fund, or Watertown Citizens for Peace, Justice, and the Environment Education Fund. And that's similar to what many other nonprofits like ours do, Mass Peace Action, 350.org, where there are two organizations, one which allows the lobbying as a C4, and the other which allows educational events, as long as the mission is being fulfilled, and grant access. So we're looking for some people to help, just to volunteer to help us form the new 501c3. We have help from attorney David Downs, who's been working with us to help us make this decision, and just need some folks to offer to just step forward and help some of us put this together and get moving on it. So please put a note in the chat if you're willing to consider helping a group of us put that together. Let other people you know who might have some time and willingness to do that as well, and get in touch with us. That would be great. And otherwise, I think we're ready to wrap up and say goodbye. And thank you all for being here. Thank you especially to Steve. That was just great.
Thank
And-
you to everybody who came.
And we'll stay in touch and stay tuned. All right.